Welcome to the King of Iron Fist Tournament 7.
Hello and welcome to another Game Nexus video. Today we're going to be taking another look at Tekken 7 on the PlayStation 4. And as you can see, since my last video like 2 years ago, there have been all these DLC characters in the first 2 season passes of Tekken 7, including the included guest character Akuma.
Negan.
And in this video, we're going to be taking a look at Negan and Noctis. So, Negan is a guest character from AMC's TV show The Walking Dead that's so popular. And as you can see, it displays like your Rage Art and Rage Drive moves, which is very convenient if it's a character you're not really familiar with, so you can see how to do their moves.
I hope you got your shitting pants on.
Round 1.
And I've actually seen the real actor who plays this character. And I definitely have to say they captured his likeness really good. And now the funny part about this video in particular that I'm doing, I've never really watched The Walking Dead, nor have at this point in August of 2019 have I fully played Final Fantasy 15. And the funny thing is I do own the game, but I've just never actually sat down and played it. It was like one of those things, I don't know if you ever have one of those games where you're like, I'm gonna really play this. This is gonna be the best thing ever.
Feels good. Sounds good.
And then you just end up not playing it at all. But basically, when it comes to Tekken 7 here, there were 2 season passes at this point.
See who wins thirsty. She is a vampire bat.
There were basically 2 season passes of this game, which added characters, extra costume packs, and everything.
Ready for the next
So, it really did help this game. And at this point of recording this, there will be a 3rd season pass that we know of at least 2 characters that will be added in that season pass, who is Zafina from Tekken 6, and the brand new character Leroy Smith, who will be making his debut as part of that season pass 3.
Pissing our pants yet?
Round 1.
And whenever I see Eddie Gordo, I always think to myself how people got mad when in Tekken 4, Christy got added, and she was kind of doing the same type of move style that Eddie does. And it kind of looks like they were trying to replace him at that point. But I believe they did bring him back with later Tekken games, and of course, as you can see, he's here in Tekken 7. So it's kind of cool that they went and brought those characters back. But as I was saying, we've had 2 whole season passes at this point of stuff in Tekken. And starting next month, I believe September 2019, is when our Season Pass 3 will begin adding content with Zafina and perhaps other content. But it looks like it was at least going to add 4 or 5 characters.
Who wins thirsty?
And now the only problem with this game is
Vampire bat.
there aren't all that many phrases that a lot of these characters say, so you're going to hear a lot of repeats.
Get ready for the next
But as I was saying, we know those 2 characters right now, and for all you know, by the time you're watching this, either more characters have been released, or more characters are known. Because for all we know, there might be more guest characters coming around, because Negan here was part of Season 2, and Noctis was part of Season 1.
Pissing our pants yet?
And as I told you, as you can see, there aren't that many things that the characters say in the beginning and end of the matches. And Armor King, I know was added in one of the season passes as well, so he was not in the base game or in the arcade Fated Retribution update that added a bunch of stuff, including Akuma, which is what the console version here was actually based off of. With the, of course, the arcade version in Japan came out in March 18th of 2015, with Fated Retribution coming out on July 5th of 2016. And then finally, on February 13th of 2019, another update, Tekken 7 Fated Retribution Round 2 got released.
You win.
Buddy, you still there?
And of course, if you've known any arcade games at all, especially in Japan, it's very common for these games to get multiple updates. I would imagine Fated Retribution Round 2 was just like a refresh to Fated Retribution, kind of how you had Virtua Fighter 5 final...
Round 1. Fight.
As I was saying, kind of like how you had Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown, there was multiple updated versions of that game. I think there was like a version A and a version B, but all they did was add balance tweaks. They didn't like add characters. But then again, with Tekken here, considering the console version came out like a year after Fated Retribution, which was June 2nd of 2017 worldwide, which is actually pretty cool to have a worldwide release of an arcade game. And then, little under 2 years later, you had February 13th of 2019 Fated Retribution Round 2. They probably added a bunch of the DLC characters into the arcade version. If they didn't... And as I was saying, they probably added a bunch of the DLC characters to the game with Fated Retribution Round 2, unless they were releasing them the same time as the console version, which wouldn't be surprising because ever since like Namco System 357 and even the Sega Lindbergh, these games have been able to be updated via network, which made it very convenient for the arcade operators, since you didn't have to get like those upgrade kits like they always would have to.
You win.
Buddy, you still there?
Which, back in the old days of arcade games, the arcade operator would have to wait for Namco to send them an upgrade kit, which would either be like a swap out of the hard drive or the DVD disc, and that would give you your extra features. But ever since they had network pushed updates with some of these newer systems, it allowed them to push the update directly to the arcade system instead of having to mail out physical media to the arcade operator to add new features.
Round 1. Fight.
And now, of course, the final boss here is still Kazumi. And strangely enough, sometimes the final boss is Akuma. And it says here that the player can fight Akuma in place of Kazumi as the final boss if certain conditions are met. Which, I've only ever done this like once, which unfortunately was not in any of these videos that I'll be showing you. because I don't know how I did it.
Round 2.
It was one time I was playing as another of the DLC characters, Julia, and just randomly I got Akuma as the boss, so I'm really not sure how I did that. Perhaps in another video I might explore that a little bit more, or even explore some of the extra features of this game that I haven't really touched on too much. But basically the whole gist of the videos that you're seeing here is just going to be to show you what these DLC characters look like, because now there might be some people here who just either they only own the base game, or they've only played it at a friend's house, or they just haven't bought the season passes. And honestly, as opposed to how other makers of games make their DLC season passes, I think Namco's been doing a good job here myself.
You win.
Look.
And now normally you'd have your credits there, but I cut them out, of course, because they're the same thing every time. So there'd be no reason to see that again.
Welcome to the King of Iron Fist Tournament 7.
And now we're gonna play as Noctis.
Noctis Lucis Kylum.
If you're wondering what I was doing there, I was looking at his two different costumes, and I was thinking, what makes these two costumes different? I don't understand. And I just selected the first one because they look fairly similar to me. But what I was going to say there was the big thing that I always think when I see Kazumi die at the end is it makes me think of Jinpachi from Tekken 5.
Vamos lá. Eu vou chutar sua bunda até o inferno.
Round 1.
Yeah, basically what Kazumi there says makes me think of Jinpachi from Tekken 5. How, like, after you defeat him, as he's dying, he's like, but this was supposed to happen. And, of course, then he dies. But Noctis is a rather unique DLC character, if I do say so myself, that he's kind of a, just like Negan even, he's not a fighting game character that they brought in as a guest and made him into a fighting game character. Because, you know, he was a role-playing game. Final Fantasy 15 came out, I believe it came out, I want to say it came out in 2016 for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And yes, if you didn't know, Tekken 7 is available on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. So, regardless of what modern gaming hardware you have, you can play this. Although, from what I understand, they never released it on any Nintendo hardware, so unfortunately, if you're a Nintendo fan, you're kind of out of luck. Unless I'm wrong, they might have released it on Nintendo Switch. But the last Nintendo Tekken game I can recall is either Tekken Tag Tournament 2 Wii U Edition or Tekken 3D Prime Edition for the 3DS.
Niente di più facile.
Round 1. Fight.
And actually Claudio here, he's a new Tekken 7 character as well. But what's weird about Noctis here is that he doesn't normally have his weapon, and then like during certain moves it just randomly appears for no adequately explored reason. Unlike a character like Yoshimitsu that regardless of what he's doing, you can always see his sword, even if he's just punching somebody and not doing a sword move. So honestly, I find that a little bit strange. But if you've never played it before, I can honestly not more of... I can,
KO. You win.
And now every time I see that ending, I don't understand what that means, unless he's talking about that bird that he sits down with, that he's following him. It's probably a joke from the game that I just don't get, but also saying I really highly recommend Tekken 7, especially if you're into fighting games, or if you like Tekken in general. You really can't fail with Tekken 7 here. As I said, if you have Xbox One in just about any flavor it comes in, I'd imagine it's probably like PlayStation 4, where it has enhancements for the higher end consoles, and of course PlayStation 4.
Round 1.
The PlayStation 4 has PlayStation 4 Pro enhancements, and I'd also imagine that Xbox One has Xbox One X enhancements. Basically, the only difference between running this on like base hardware as opposed to running it on the quote-unquote upgraded versions of both consoles is that the graphics run at like higher resolutions and they look a little bit better. Although, at the capture I did this at, I captured this at 720p, 60 frames per second. You probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. It's only when you're like trying to get this game up to like 1080p 60, that's when you're really gonna see like the game does like a smart scaling thing where it will scale the game down in order to keep a consistent frame rate, which is actually a pretty nice thing when it comes to a game like this. And of course, how it's gonna look on your PC is dependent upon your PC specs. So like for instance, my computer, which I legitimately built in the summer of 2010, which at this point means that it's a 9-year-old computer, it can actually run this game at full specs at 720p. So I'm actually surprised that my old aging PC that's nearly 9 years old now can even run this game at all, let alone running it actually pretty nicely, which really surprised me that not only could the game actually run, but it looks pretty nice. Sure, it's not like bleeding edge, but then again, you're talking about a 9-year-old piece of hardware. The only other like 9-year-old piece of hardware that I could think of that would run a game that's fairly decent would be like PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360. Those consoles like can run Tekken 7 or Tekken Tag 2, and they still look pretty good.
Round 1.
But as far as computers go, typically when it comes to games, unless you have a game that scales so nicely like Tekken 7 does with its Unreal Engine 4, which is a new technology for this game as opposed to all the other Tekken games that use Namco's own 3D game engines. This uses Epic Games' Unreal Engine 4. And as you can see, it looks quite nice as well. But basically, this is a really good fighting game, and I really highly recommend it. The arcade mode, as you can see from these quick playthroughs that I did for you, with my main intention just to be to show off these DLC characters, it's not that in-depth or anything, but it's kind of a cool way to get like a feel for the character. Another mode that this game has that I really like is called Treasure Battle, which you can actually acquire new customization items. So what's cool is you'll go through a bunch of fights and you'll unlock new items you can put on your fighters. So that's a pretty fun mode. Plus it's kind of like an endless mode, so you don't have to just like stop after 5 fights. So that's pretty fun. But they do get a little harder as you go on, but I really enjoyed the Treasure Battle. And now the only two fights that take a little while to load are Kazumi and Heihachi. Of course, also Akuma when you do get him, because they have this little pre-fight thing that's got to load up. And it's the same regardless of who the character is and the situation.
Round 1. Fight.
It would be kind of cool if, like, Kazumi had a certain, like, special thing to say for a certain character. Like, if Akuma was coming to fight her, if she said something, like, different, because he's, like, this really extreme, powerful guy, and she'd be like, hey, I'm gonna, like, beat you now because I'm gonna prove that you're not as powerful as you think, or something like that. That'd be cool. And now whenever I see Kazumi's transformation here, I always think to myself, it's pretty cool, but it's not nearly as cool as Tekken Tag Tournament 2 Unlimited, or even Tekken Tag Tournament 2, which I think they still both have the same Jun Kazama transformation into Unknown. Because it's more or less a seamless transformation.
Round 2.
That not only with Jun Kazama in Tekken Tag Tournament 2, she literally puts her head down for about a second, and then she raises it up and she becomes unknown, and the basic whole stage transforms into this, like, hellscape. That's gotta be one of the coolest. Well, you had an easy time beating the boss, but guess what? You're now taken to this, like, hellish place, and the boss is gonna be a lot harder now, so get ready. But honestly, other than a couple of extra little powers that Kazumi gains, I think she can shoot some silly little red fireballs. Yeah, there you go. It's not really much of a drastic change when you compare it to, like, regular Kazumi. And it doesn't feel like, basically round 1 was easy mode and round 2 was, oh my god, how can you possibly beat this character? Whereas I would easily say with Tekken Tag Tournament 2, that's one of those situations where you kind of feel like the difficulty ramped up a lot when you got to the next round. But yeah, those are two of the DLC characters, Negan and Noctis from Walking Dead and Noctis from Final Fantasy 15. Very fun characters, and not your normal Tekken fare, which you can purchase these characters on their own or buy the whole Season 1 and Season 2 DLC passes in order to get them. But it's definitely a really cool addition to this game. Well, this has been another Game Nexus video, and I shall see you in my next video. And don't forget to join me next video for a couple more DLC characters. Bye.